Taylor Swift is a master of reinvention, but with the life of a showgirl the world watched a superstar wrestle with glory, strategy, and the creeping fear of becoming background noise. She launched the album like a spectacle, countless variants, viral voice memos, and an army of superfans, but the cultural conversation quickly shifted from triumph to critique. Is this ambition artistry or algorithmic dominance? Behind the sequins and the sales figures lies a deeper story about legacy, control, and the psychology of a woman determined not to fade. This is the story of Taylor as performer, strategist, and a human navigating the cost of never stopping. Taylor Swift's career has always lived at the intersection of artistry and strategy, a songwriter who learned from country stages, a pop architect who mastered eras, and a cultural operator who treats album rollouts like chess. The life of a showgirl arrived as the latest proof that Taylor understands how to command attention. The execution was precise. Dozens of physical variants, exclusive runs, strategic timing across territories, and intimate glimpses into the creative process via voice memos. The result was staggering commercial success at first, record-breaking opening numbers that reminded everyone she still moves markets, but also a swift and intense backlash that reframed the narrative from creative triumph to overexposure and commercial engineering. What this album revealed is not just the mechanics of modern pop commerce, but the anxieties, real or manufactured, that animate one of the world's most scrutinized artists. To understand the cultural tumble that followed, start with the rollout. Taylor released an extraordinary number of versions, dozens of editions across CDs, vinyl, cassettes, and digital packages, each one a collectible piece of the larger campaign. For many fans, collecting became part of the ritual. For many critics, it looked like a highly optimized scheme to inflate first-week numbers. The phenomenon matters because chart records still serve as currency in pop mythology. Being the biggest first-week seller is not only a business win, it's a cultural headline. Taylor has chased and defended legacy before. Her re-recordings were about reclaiming masters and control, but here the method looked like accumulation for the sake of domination. It raised old questions in a new era. When does strategic marketing supersede art? When does fandom fuel commerce in a way that eclipses musical conversation? At the same time, the album's sonic choices and lyrics invited a divided response. Showgirl was marketed as a glittering spectacle, burlesque influences, theatrical flourishes, and an inside-the-curtain concept, but many listeners found a mismatch between expectation and reality. The record leaned into meta-commentary about performance, the exhaustion of always playing a role, and yet critics and fans debated whether the artistic risk landed. Some tracks were hailed as clever, intimate, or emotionally grounded, others were labeled cringy, clumsy, or recycled. This split is not new in Taylor's career. Eras like Reputation and Lover were both panned and later reassessed, but the intensity of the debate felt amplified, as if listeners were exhausted from continuous output and relentless era cycles. The album's voice memos, leaked snippets, and production footage amplified the intimacy but also the weirdness of the rollout. In one sense, voice memos are a brilliant humanizing tool, a raw peek at creation that blurs the distance between superstar and listener. But packaged as collectible extras and timed exclusives, the memos became another form of market differentiation. Moments meant to be tender, fragments of melody and laugh, were subjected to viral mockery and intense dissection. When producers' notes or off-the-cuff takes go viral, it flattens the mystique of the studio and invites commentary on process rather than product. For listeners who loved the mythic Taylor, the one who conjured worlds with pen and melody, the commodification of creation felt like a breach. It complicated how authenticity is performed in the digital age. Is revealing more always more honest, or can intimacy become another transaction? Underlying the commercial and aesthetic debates is a recurring psychological theme, the fear of fading. Taylor has openly acknowledged industry ageism and the anxiety of becoming obsolete. In that context, the frenetic release schedule, albums, re-recordings, deluxe editions, reads like both a survival strategy and an emotional compulsion. She's built an empire in a space that treats women as disposable by a certain age. Pushing forward becomes a defense. That instinct breeds brilliance. Taylor's relentless output has yielded eras that shaped playlists, movie soundtracks, and generational language. But it also breeds repetition and fatigue. When the mechanism for staying relevant becomes patternized, critics hear strategy before they hear nuance. The life of a showgirl, always performing, never truly resting, becomes not merely a theme, but a lived reality for an artist whose career depends on perpetual reinvention. Another axis of criticism was the question of relatability. Taylor built her brand on voice-of-a-generation songwriting that felt confessional and accessible: young love, heartbreak, small-town Americana. As her life shifted, billion-dollar beauty lines, global tours, high-profile relationships, so did the terms of relatability. Fans who once found themselves in her diaries now sometimes feel left behind by references to luxury or insider scenes. Yet relatability has always been an artifice, a carefully curated closeness that she has monetized and curated masterfully. The tension today is that the scale of her empire makes that closeness harder to sustain without appearing performative. When an artist's lived experience is far beyond the average listener's, keeping emotional translation effective requires either radical humility or undeniable artistry. In Showgirl, some moments read as successful translation, others read as tone-deaf. Still, history suggests we should be cautious before writing obituaries for a cultural figure. Taylor's career is littered with misreadings and premature takes. Albums once dismissed, Reputation, Lover, are now reassessed and celebrated within different cultural frames. Pop culture's reception is cyclical, context ages. Songs that read as gimmicky in year 1 can become generational touchstones in year 5. Taylor herself understands this arc. Part of her genius is her long game. She constructs eras with layers, merchandise, visuals, personal narratives, and recontextualization that can be revisited and reinterpreted by fans and critics alike. The question for Showgirl is whether its current divisiveness will become a point of nostalgia or a permanent mark. These structural questions are part of a larger debate about how we measure cultural impact in an age of streams, bundles, and NFTs. Taylor's strategies expose how the industry still values first-week metrics and headline wins, even when those wins are achieved through highly engineered campaigns. And yet one cannot reduce Taylor Swift to tactics alone. Her songwriting craft, her capacity to conjure a specific world with a turn of phrase, or to build a chorus that becomes the communal soundtrack for a particular life moment, remains formidable. Showgirl contains moments where imagery, melody, and storytelling still pierce. The album's theatrical conceit enables moments of playful self-mythologizing and genuine reflection. There are songs that will land as late-night favorites, tracks that will thread into the broader tapestry of her catalog, and lines that, years from now, will be quoted by fans recounting personal history. That persistent capacity to connect is the reason her missteps matter so much, because expectations are high for an artist who has taught a generation the language of memory. Ultimately, the life of a showgirl is a mirror of our times, an era where artistry collides with commerce, where intimacy must be packaged to monetize, and where the spectacle of celebrity is both a refuge and a trap. Taylor is a protagonist who refuses to be sidelined. Her methods provoke admiration and fatigue in equal measure. The conversation around this album isn't simply about whether it's her best or her worst, it's about how we read creative labor when it's entangled with empire building. When an artist becomes infrastructure, label boss, media phenomenon, merch machine, the simplest critique becomes, is she an artist or an institution? The honest answer is both. Taylor Swift has always been a hybrid, a writer with a boardroom, a performer who understands the price of permanence. Showgirl is another chapter in her long experiment with legacy, and regardless of the streaming numbers, the debates it sparked reveal something important: culture still cares. Critics and fans may quarrel, but they are still listening. And in the long play, that attention, fleeting as it may sometimes feel, is a form of currency more telling than any single chart position. Taylor's The Life of a Showgirl forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about fame, art, and appetite. How much hustle is ambition, and how much is fear? Whether you call the album courageous or calculated, its real value is the conversation it ignites about modern celebrity and the costs of never slowing down. If this deep dive gave you new perspective, share it, debate it in the comments, and subscribe for more cultural analysis that goes beyond headlines. Tell us, which Showgirl track moved you, and which felt like a misstep? Your voice finishes the story.